The Rams beat the Cardinals in week 3 and look a lot better doing it than they did a week ago, but still a lot of work to do on both sides of the ball. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. I not only host this podcast, the Locked On Rams podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, but I am also the host of the Rams pregame show, halftime show, and postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710. I've been doing that since the Rams came back to Los Angeles way back in 2016. Just finished up a week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals. And we got a lot of things to get into, including just kind of some random observations that we'll get to in just a little bit. Some good, some not so good along the way. Plus, I want to talk about what the Rams did in the back half of their defense in their secondary, specifically Jalen Ramsey and Darian Kendrick, who is making his NFL debut today. That's coming up in just a little bit. But first, let me remind you to follow me on Twitter at Travis Rogers, and make sure that you're checking out our Rams Locked On Rams YouTube channel as well. Locked On Rams on YouTube. It's another great way to see the podcast. And while you're doing that, why don't you subscribe to it? Why don't you subscribe to the Locked On Rams podcast right here as well? A little check mark, the bookmark, whatever you got, click it. And that way you get the Locked On Rams feed in your phone, laptop every single day. All right. So look, think about where this team was at the beginning of the season. After when Thursday night NFL season kicks off, right? It is a party, it is a show, and then the game starts, and it's a, whoa, man, what in the world was that? What did the Rams do to themselves during the offseason? Why are they so much slower than Buffalo? Why did everything that went wrong go wrong? And how do you fix it? That the Buffalo Bills are never going to lose a game, et cetera, to an Atlanta game a week ago that felt like a win that was more good fortune than anything else. Not necessarily great play, but maybe a little bit of good luck went into that one, to where they are right now, which is a 2-1 team, 1-0 in the division, a team that is looking up at no one in the division. We'll see how San Francisco ends up on Monday Night Football, but with a chance to go a week from now into San Francisco to play the Niners on Monday Night Football, and potentially be 3-1 through the first quarter of the season and feeling really good about it. That's how quickly things change in the NFL. Buffalo loses today. There's exactly 3 undefeated teams in the NFL. You're looking at the New York Giants. That won't last long. The Philadelphia Eagles, who may be a little bit better than anybody thought, and the Miami Dolphins, who are off to a nice start. So, look, the Rams are exactly where you would hope they would be after 3 weeks, and things continue to get better. They did a lot of really good things on Sunday against the Cardinals. Let's start with what I think was the best part of their day, which is their defense. This was a defense that had all sorts of holes coming into today, right? That the secondary was badly banged up. This is no Troy Hill. There's no Kobe Durant. There was no Jordan Fuller. None of these guys stepped on the field today. And you're playing a bunch of guys that have not had a ton of opportunities back there. Darian Kendrick's making his NFL debut. They didn't give up any touchdowns. None. Right? Aaron Donald got his 100th career sack in about half the time that the next closest guy has gotten it done. So, that's just unbelievably remarkable. He got to the quarterback. You got to see some pressure from team that was not just Aaron Donald and not just Bobby Wagner, which is pretty good news. We saw Terrell Lewis get back there. We saw Malcolm Floyd do a little bit better. Greg Gaines getting some pressure on the quarterback as well. So all of a sudden, a defense that looked like they couldn't stop anybody on Thursday night against the Bills, a defense that was getting, I don't want to say a lot of that was special teams and offense giving the ball away too quickly, but defense that did give up, 20-plus points to the Atlanta Falcons, gave up no touchdowns to Kyler Murray, who tore the Raiders up in the second half of a game a week ago. That's a big deal. They had a chance to bend but they never broke. And I think that's when the Rams defense is at its absolute best. That's the good news. That's the part that fills you with a lot of confidence moving forward into that San Francisco game. The part that's still clearly a work in progress is that Rams offense. For the first time in his Rams career, Matthew Stafford did not throw a touchdown pass. Now, there are some extenuating circumstances to that. Those being, namely, Cooper Kupp dropped what would have been a sure touchdown pass on a throw that was a 10 out of 10. Kupp just lost the handle and it fell out of his hands. Allen Robinson had dropped one that was right there as well on the goal line that probably would have been a touchdown. But you can tell that that Rams offense is still not firing on all cylinders. We saw Matthew Stafford miss a long throw down the field in the second half. Cooper Kupp had gotten behind the defense and Stafford just missed him. He just, you know, it was a little bit inside. The ball was a little, or I should say the ball was inside. Kupp went a little bit outside, and there was just a little bit of a miscommunication there. There is still not nearly that level of familiarity that Allen Robinson needs with this offense. That I think to me is both surprising and disappointing and yet understandable because this is the fact of the matter. These are the facts. Allen Robinson came in and is playing in a totally different defense than he played in offense that he played in Jacksonville and in Chicago. And he's playing with a totally different type of quarterback in Matthew Stafford than any of the guys that he's played with before. So a new offense and a new quarterback combined with the fact that the new quarterback and Allen Robinson haven't spent a ton of time together, that connection that Kupp and Stafford were able to form so quickly last year is clearly not happening this way with Allen Robinson, mostly because Matthew Stafford hasn't been able to throw. We've talked about the elbow injury that he's been nursing towards the end of last season, all through the offseason, through camp, through the early part of this. And it's just prevented him from getting the reps that he needs to get on the same page with Allen Robinson. I thought it would happen quickly. I'm disappointed that it hasn't, but it makes sense. It also fills you with a little bit of optimism because here's the facts. The first game was a bust. The second game was okay. They were kind of force-feeding him the ball. Today, it felt like it was a little bit more in the flow of the offense, just a drop, maybe a little bit of miscommunication. But you are starting to see that graph trend in the right direction, and it makes me feel a lot better about what this is going to look like a month from now, 2 months from now, and most importantly, what it might look like by the time that you get into the postseason in January and hopefully beyond that, because he's going to have to be an important part of what they're doing offensively. More good news on the offensive side. You got to see Cam Akers get going in the second half after doing absolutely nothing in the first half. And don't look now, but Ben Skoranek might be establishing himself as that third wide receiver / fullback / second tight end / what do you need from me today, coach? So good on him as well. We'll cover all of these things more in depth as we get deeper into the week here on Locked On Rams. What I want to talk about next, Jalen Ramsey's demise has been vastly overreported. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Now, word from our sponsor, BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp. If you're anything like most of us, right, it's when something's not quite going right, you try to figure out what the problem is, and you get fixated on the problem. You get fixated on why the problem's there, as opposed to focusing on problem solving, right? That's kind of the way that life goes. BetterHelp can help you with all of these things. It helps you get back into problem solving mode as opposed to just kind of going over and over again. It gives you a roadmap to sign some of these problems that you're running into. BetterHelp and a therapist can really help with sort of these things. And I've been around a number of people in my life who have gone through therapy, and it's helped them tremendously. So if you've thought about this, if you've thought about maybe trying BetterHelp, this is a great option to do it. BetterHelp is. It's convenient, it's accessible, it's affordable, and it is entirely online. You can get matched with a therapist like that, right? Fill out a brief survey and switch therapists if it doesn't quite work out for you anytime you want. It is incredibly easy to do it. Go to betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. You'll start feeling so much better. You will feel like you can attack these problems as opposed to just having them spin around and around in your head. I've seen it firsthand. It makes a great deal of difference. betterhelp.com/lockedon. So you got to see one of my favorite things in sports. It happened today, or I should say on Sunday. I'm not quite sure when you might be listening to this, against the Arizona Cardinals. Jalen Ramsey did that thing that I absolutely love, which is remind us all of a great player that, look, I may have been down for a minute. I may have had a bad game. I may have had a bad play, but just because that happened doesn't mean that I'm still not that guy. Jalen Ramsey showed up in the desert and was incredible. He was the best player on the field for the first half of that game. And Arizona was trying him a little bit, and it wasn't just that he had a bunch of interceptions or that he had a pick six or anything like that, because that's not what happened. But what he did was kind of establish the fact that y'all remember I'm the best in the whole game at this, right? Y'all remember that this is what I do. I can just take guys out of games. I can not only cover, I can cover an outside guy. I can go into the slot and deal with your tight end, which he did with Zach Ertz. I can bring the heat when you need to do it, which he did a couple of times along the way. He was absolutely fantastic. He had 8 tackles along the day. He had 2 different passes defended along the way. But it wasn't just a stat sheet kind of thing that made you stand up and go, oh, okay. It was a whole attitude thing that you got to see Hollywood Brown make a bunch of catches, and Ramsey's just looking like, dude, you're doing nothing. You're getting a whole bunch of stuff that is not affecting this game at all, right? That this was not the Stephon Diggs moment or the Jamar Chase moment or the Mike Evans. You're like, dude, guys are just running past him. That he's trying to make something happen and it's not working. Today, he was trying to make something happen, and guess what? Something happened along the way. He was terrific. He had the swagger, he had the presence that great players oftentimes have. And this was not just lightning in a bottle where the old timers still got it kind of thing. It wasn't that. You could tell that his confidence has not been shaken, that he still has the belief in himself, that Sean McVay and Raheem Morris still have the belief in Jalen Ramsey as that guy along the way. And yeah, I get it. DeAndre Hopkins unavailable for this game. He's serving his suspension for violating the PED policy in the NFL. But can we not even go there? Can we just agree that that's not what happened today? Because I've seen Jalen Ramsey lock up DeAndre Hopkins going back to his days in Jacksonville and Houston. It's continued when they both went from the AFC South over here to the NFC West. So while, DeAndre Hopkins is a great wide receiver, don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh, he's going to go. No. Jalen had that locked down. That's number one as far as the defensive backs go for today. Number 2 is Darian Kendrick. Darian Kendrick had played 0 NFL games other than some preseason games coming into this thing, and he was fantastic along the way. He just absolutely was what you would hope for in a guy like that. So a couple of different things here. Number 1, you really can't overemphasize how important it is when you have a guy like that who's played in big games before. Keep in mind, he was inactive for most of the first 2 games of this season. But this is also a dude who started for the University of Georgia in the national championship game last year, who went through an SEC schedule last year and thrived during it, right? That, yeah, I get it. The NFL has better athletes. It's faster. There's more at stake. You're playing for money, all of these sorts of deals for sure. But the difference is he's played in bigger crowds than that. He's played in louder environments than that. And maybe he's covering some guys that might be a little bit better than he's seen, but he's covering Alabama's guys. He's covering LSU guys. He's covering his own guys at Georgia in practice. He's played against a bunch of good players. Now, usually it takes a moment or two to kind of bring what this is a football game. It didn't take him very long at all. He just showed. Now, he gave up catches. He gave up some yardage along the way. But what really impressed me was there was no moment where if you're just watching the game, oh, man, they're just picking on him. They're just, they're breaking the huddle and saying, where's number 6? Let's go get that dude. It wasn't that at all. He was really aware of where he had help. He was really aware of where he didn't have help. There was a great sequence in the fourth quarter. And the Rams, I thought defense was perfect. They weren't trying to prevent anything. They just, we're going to give you 4 and 5 yards, but it's going to take you 15 plays to move down the field. It's going to take you all the time that you have left. You're going to have to burn all the timeouts that you have left. We're not going to give you anything deep. And there was a moment where they tried to hit Kendrick with a double move. He didn't bite on it. They hit him for a first down in front of it, but he makes the tackle inbounds, keeps the clock running. Perfect. lot of guys, young guys in particular, would have been looking to make a big play there, would have been looking to get some, to get in the end zone, to make that thing that shows up on SportsCenter, whatever it might be. Darian Kendrick stayed home. He knew that he had help on the inside. He knew that he wasn't getting beat over the top, and just played it like a guy that had been around the block over and over and over again. Now, look, Kobe Durant is going to come back. Troy Hill is going to come back. And maybe not, he moves down the depth chart when those guys do. But this is where the Rams have had so much success over the last few years, is getting guys key minutes, key snaps, key plays, key games way early in the season. So by the time you get into November, December, January, potentially February, that it's not, hey, I've played 10 snaps all year, I don't know what the hell's going on out here. They're comfortable. They're ready to go. This is the brilliance of what Sean McVay and Les Snead have built. They're able to take guys that have been late round draft picks or not drafted at all and slide them in there, get them up to speed quickly enough to where if you need to use them, they're available to be used and they can thrive. So congratulations to him on his NFL debut. On a stat sheet, it's nothing that's going to make your socks roll up and down, but the eye test, Darian Kendrick can play in the NFL. At least he could for a week, and it gives you all sorts of options moving forward, whether it's with Hill, whether it's with Durant, whether it's with any of the other guys at that back end. Knowing that you have one more guy that can play like that is incredibly important and versatile. Congratulations to him. Okay, when we come back, a whole bunch of odds and ends from week number 3 against the Arizona Cardinals. Some good, some very good, and some things that you're going to want to keep your eyes on moving forward. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. My name is Travis Rogers. Make sure you click that subscribe button in your podcast feed, and also check out our Locked On Rams YouTube page as well. All right, just some quick observations from Sunday afternoon and the Rams' 20-12 win against the Arizona Cardinals. They're 2-1. They will be taking on the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football in week number 4, with a chance to really put up a pretty nice first quarter of the season if they can take care of business against their rivals up north. Let's start with this. Let's start with Cam Akers. A really mixed bag for Cam Akers today. First half, he had -1 yard. You heard me right. 2 carries, -1 yard. And it looked like, man, here we go again. Man, Cam Akers, what did he do this week? Or what didn't he do this week? Why did he go from clearly being in Sean McVay's doghouse in week 1 to working his way out of it in week 2 and having, an okay game? It wasn't great, but it was fantastic relative to what it was in week 1. And through the first half, it's all Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson is the guy getting all the carries, and Cam Akers is getting virtually nothing. And when he does, he's doing even less than nothing. He's putting up negative yardage along the way. And you're thinking, okay, well, this is going to be one of those games. We'll hear what he says afterwards. And then fast forward to the third quarter, Cam Akers makes just an unbelievable contribution on a drive. He contributes 53 yards on one drive, right? And including multiple runs of double-digit yardage along the way. And he finally finishes it off with a touchdown to give the Rams that cushion that ultimately was the difference in the game. It was so bizarre. A guy that couldn't get anything going, clearly not the coach's favorite, he gets an unbelievable drive, scores a touchdown. Everybody's thrilled. Sean McVay is the first guy down there to give him a high five, is the first guy celebrating all these things. Then the Rams are going again. They're getting ready to go score another touchdown. Cam Akers is a valuable part of that drive. The Rams are running the ball effectively. They're spinning clock. All of these things that we were talking about leading up to this game that they were unable to do in week 2 and week 1. They're knocking it out of the park, and Cam Akers fumbles. And he puts the ball on the ground. He's on the 1 yard line. He tries to reach out. It gets popped out. They fumble, and it gives the Cardinals a little bit of life at that point. It's just an incredibly bizarre game. Now, McVay afterwards said that, listen, I told him we're going to go back to him. He's going to be a big part of what we do, et cetera, et cetera. Good. This is becoming a bit of a trend, right? We remember that he put it on the ground near the goal line against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the divisional round last year. I know that was a while ago, but how about we cover up when we're getting close to going into the end zone? If you get tackled short, you get tackled short. Don't give the ball to the other team. This is twice now. And look, while Sean McVay may be saying, I'm going to give him more chances, I believe in him, he's an important part of what we do. If you keep putting the ball on the ground, there's not a coach in the world that's going to keep giving it to you. This is your last one. right? If you go another 3 years without one, you can have another one, but you can't have another one anytime soon. It's just that game. Look, the game was 20-12. That game could have easily been 35-10 or 35-9 or whatever it might have been. But that gave Arizona life, something that needs to get cleaned up along the way. Really bizarre game for Cam Akers. A lot of negative and some really fantastic work as well. Thought the game changed on one play in particular. Matthew Stafford on a 3rd and 11 has a free man coming from his left. And it's one of those things. When they send the extra guy, it's the quarterback's job to make that extra guy miss. It's coming from his blind side. He doesn't see it coming. He sees it coming, but kind of plays a little bit of possum right there. And at the very last second, kind of spins out, hits Cooper Kupp with a dart for a 12-yard gain, converts a 3rd and 11. The Rams have had 3 3-and-outs prior to that in a row, and it felt like the game was starting to tilt a little bit back towards Arizona's favor. It was just an incredibly high-level play by a great quarterback making a great play. And that throw right there should put to rest any ideas about whether or not his arm is healthy, because that was a 98-mile-an-hour fastball on the black that was just perfectly delivered. A great play by him. And then very quickly after that, hits Tyler Higbee for a big game, 28-yard game. Then they just keep chipping down the field. They go and they score a touchdown. That game, you have to punt that away. Who knows what happens, but that was an incredibly decisive moment inside that game as well. One thing that we'll kind of end on this, and it's more of a curiosity than it is a big deal because you ended up winning. It's more of a curiosity because it's something that hasn't been directly related to a loss in a big moment in Sean McVay's career. But if there's anything about Sean McVay that is just perplexing to me, that they just don't seem to have a good grasp on, just fundamentally, logistically, administratively, however you want to characterize it, their timeout usage is just bizarre. Just bizarre. They waste them early in games. They take penalties for a delay of game and then end up taking a timeout after a delay of game penalty. It's very, very peculiar how Sean McVay uses his timeouts. Now, again, if that's the nitpick that you have for your head coach, you've got a pretty fantastic head coach, and the Rams certainly do in Sean McVay. But if there is any sort of administrative flaw in his game, that timeout distribution has always been one that's made me scratch my head a little bit. Again, if that's the complaint, it's a pretty good time. It's a good week for the Rams, a good week to be 2-1, to be moving to Arizona, second road game of the season, second divisional road game of the season, and a chance to finish that first quarter of the season at 3-1 with a couple of divisional wins, top of the division. Real big opportunities. We're going to get into all of that coming up this week on Locked On Rams. Just another very good example of why you need to make sure that you're subscribed. Thanks one more time for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock, former NFL scout Matt Williamson, they're giving you expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.